everybody. I'm Jennie Rees, and welcome to the Second Stride virtual fundraiser. I don't know about you, but that little tune that we heard there got my foot tapping and got me very excited about the Kentucky Derby and about our panelists here that are going to smarten us all up about the Kentucky Derby. First, we have that adult beverages make everything more fun. So we do have Mark Tubridy here to be our mixologist from New York, from the 21 Club, in fact. And then we have Kate and Bradar that everybody knows, and Jay Priven that everybody knows, and Byron King that everybody knows. And so we are have an exciting show ahead, and we're going to have the mocktails and the cocktails. Mark was explaining how to make a mocktail for those of us that maybe have to do a little bit of work. And we're going to learn a bit about Second Stride. And I got to tell you that it's so cool when you see these retired racehorses that go on to second professions and the variety. I remember talking to Ken Smith about it, and it's amazing the different things that these thoroughbreds could do and how they're really catching on in the different pursuits. And I think we all love seeing them. They want to work, they want a job after the racetrack, and organizations like Second Stride really make that possible. Second Stride isn't all volunteer organization, but they still need money to do their good works in their programs and to rehome and to retrain these horses. And that means, as horse racing is a participatory sport through, wagering, we also need you to reach into your wallets a little bit and help them on Second Stride here. Help them raise some money for the good works that they do. And I want to remind you all that there is a silent auction on the Second Stride website under the events tab, or you can type in Kentucky Derby 2020.givesmart.com. Other cool things, like you can buy a post position. It's a 50-50. If your post position wins, you get half the pool. So let's keep thinking of those things as the night goes on. And let's get the party started. I think that Mark's first up, and I believe you're going to have a Second Stride cocktail. Is that correct, Mark?
Second Stride. This is a complete original tonight. I'm so proud to be here to support this fantastic cause. And, just as Second Stride really seeks to showcase all the amazing things that horses do for us and how we appreciate them both on and off the track, bartenders too are focusing a lot on things like sustainability right now, and how do we make the most use of our ingredients by not just using them once, but several different times. So that's exactly what we're going to do right now. We're going to make a Second Stride cocktail. It's very simple to make. It also makes for a great mocktail. We'll talk about that. But the idea here is we're going to try to use these ingredients as much as we can. So we're going to dive right on into it. We're going to start off with 1 part of fresh lime juice directly into our cocktail shaker. Now, when you're using citrus juices, I feel like a broken record. I talk about this all the time, but they do oxidize the longer they sit out, just like wine. So you want to make sure you're squeezing those juices as close to when you're making the cocktail as possible. So fresh is best. That's kind of my motto when it comes to citrus juices. Now, we have that acidity. We want to balance it out now with some sweetness. So we're going to have a hibiscus agave syrup. And I know that sounds really complicated and intimidating, but it's not. So agave is the plant from which we get tequila. But of course, we know that agave syrup or agave nectar is available in pretty much every grocery store. It's a great sort of low glycemic alternative to sugar, and it's really delicious in cocktails. So what I like to do to turn this into a syrup, because it's a little thick, almost like honey, is put into a saucepan with just a little bit of water and stir that together over a low flame. Basically what you're doing is loosening that up so it doesn't just stick to the ice in the cocktail shaker or to your measuring tool. Now, once that's nice and hot, take it off the flame, and you can add dried flowers like hibiscus flowers to it, and it's going to impart this incredible floral flavor and also a beautiful crimson color. Okay, guys, so we're going to go ahead and add the same amount that we did for the lime juice. We just want to balance that acidity with the sweetness, so we're going to be adding 1 part of the hibiscus agave nectar, and you're going to see the color that adds later on. Now, when you make that syrup, once you finish and you strain out the hibiscus flowers, don't throw them out. Again, this is all about getting a second use out of things. So hold on to them. I'm going to tell you in just a second how we can kind of stretch those a little bit further. Okay, now the next ingredient is going to be coconut water. So coconut water comes from the young, kind of fresh coconuts. Now, once they mature, that's when we start getting things like coconut milk and the coconut meat that we know for like coconut flakes. So there's a variety of ways to use that versatile tropical fruit. But this is the coconut water. This is that very kind of nutty, tropical, almost has a saline quality to it, which is going to be great to bring out all the flavors in this cocktail. So we did 1 part of the lime juice, 1 part of the agave nectar. We're going to do 2 parts of our coconut water here. The nice thing when we talk about cocktails in terms of parts is that I'm doing this for one drink, but you could do a whole pitcher of this stuff, you know? But if you learn it by those ratios, it's very easy to scale it upwards. All right, now, if you don't drink alcohol and you still want a great mocktail, what we have in the tin right there is perfect as is. For everybody else, if you're not working, like me, it's 6 o'clock here in New York, we're gonna add some booze to it, but not just any alcohol here. We're gonna be using number Juan tequila. This is a really fantastic high-end brand of tequila. So it's named after Don Juan Alejandro, and what really put a price and a value on taking care of the land on which he grew the agave. So it wasn't just about more mass production. It was about honoring the field, honoring the agave plant, and keeping that sustainable. So that's one of the things that makes it so special. So the two co-founders, Ron White and Alex Raimundo, have done a fantastic job of keeping the quality of this tequila brand absolutely as high as it can possibly be. So I'm proud to be putting this in the cocktail tonight. This is the number Juan Tequila Reposado, which means that it's been aged for 9 months in a blend of American and French white oak casks. A lot going on here, super smooth and really flavorful. So we're going to be adding 2 parts. The same amount that we did for the coconut water is what we're doing for the tequila. And now, pretty much time to shake this up. So we're going to go ahead and add some ice to our cocktail shaker. It's always the fun part here. For those of you that may be wondering, one of the reasons why we're shaking this cocktail as opposed to stirring it is because we've got some citrus juice involved. So for bartenders, that's always kind of a key. We're going to want to shake this. We want to integrate it. We want to get a great mouthfeel and some aeration here. And it's fun, and it's the most workout that I get at home during quarantine. Good job. All right, good shake there, guys. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill a highball glass with ice. I know what you're thinking. There's ice in the cocktail shaker. Why don't we just use that? The thing is that ice has already served its purpose. It's diluted our drink. It has chilled it down. But in so doing, it's gotten smaller in size. And one of the things about ice is the larger it is, the slower it melts. So if we really want to maintain this cocktail as fresh as possible for as long as possible, we want to strain it over fresh ice. Now, can you see that color? That's all from that hibiscus that went into the agave syrup. This is absolutely delicious. For any of you that maybe get passion tea at Starbucks, I think hibiscus is one of the main ingredients that they use there. So finally, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. But I told you to hold on to those hibiscus flowers that we used in the syrup, right? So as they infuse that syrup, they also got inundated with that sugar. So if you put that in a low oven, like 250, and bake it off, you can actually crystallize the sugar and get this beautiful candied hibiscus flower. So that's our second use for that. And like we were talking about, coconut water is great from young coconuts, but the coconut meat from mature coconuts, we can go ahead and do some toasted coconut flakes, put that right on top. This is a beautiful cocktail, guys. Second stride, so many ways to appreciate these ingredients, but really what we're talking about is how do we appreciate these beautiful racehorses. Guys, that is the second stride.
Wow, that's awesome. I tell you what, I'm getting thirsty just looking at it.
Yeah,
Me too, right?
I'm so pleased that James Bond, so he knew what he was talking about when he said shaken, not stirred, right?
See, yeah. So much fun history and pop culture around mixology. You know, anyone that knows me will tell you I geek out about it. I love the history. I love the science. But again, it doesn't have to be just with alcoholic spirits. You know, a lot of this, you saw the beginning of that cocktail was really building up flavors that were non-alcoholic, and we just added the spirit at the end. So a lot to work with there, guys.
Well, it looks awesome. I love your passion for this. It's so awesome to see such knowledge about this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd say after a few of these second strides, people will be looking to bet the number one in the Derby, right?
I think so.
Yeah. But one thing we got to, we want to thank Number One Tequila for being a sponsor. We want to thank all the sponsors of Second Stride that are supporting this virtual fundraiser, because I know when I used to be in the newspaper business, we kind of poo-pawed sponsors and like, why do we have to put them in their name and all that? When you get out in the real world, you understand that's how things get done. That's how things get put on. So we want to thank all the sponsors, and you'll be seeing them on the scroll here. I'm going to leave somebody out, but Excel Equine, Sky High Racing, Tim Burns CPA, Coolmore, Adena Springs, Gainesway, Windstar, PM Advertising, and really appreciate that it makes Spendthrift Farm, makes everything possible. So, okay, now we are going to go with, now that we've got our fuel here, we're going to ask a couple questions for our panelists. And the thing I really like, I've known all these panelists quite a long time, and they're excellent, excellent handicappers. They all know how to read a horse, but they also know how to read a horse. So, but have maybe a little bit different perspectives. So my first question is, I used to spend a lot of time trying to come up with these so-called Derby rules and find the statistical patterns on how to pick which horse would be best equipped to go a mile and a quarter the first Saturday in May as a 3-year-old. Well, now we're the first Saturday in September. And so obviously the horses are 4 months older. What impact does that have? And are there any norms that might still hold up, what we call the norms, but the so-called Derby rules that still hold up in this very crazy time? And whoever wants to start off. Someone, Kate.
I'll jump in. I mean, one thing about it, the delay right off the bat from a handicapper's perspective and for most of the horsemen has been something that didn't work in the favor of the late developers as much as I think everybody would have hoped for, because a horse like Tis the Law was peaked and primed and ready in May and would have been the favorite, or at least one of the favorites, if not the favorite. And he's continued that way. So in some sense, the fact that the delay has happened has maybe worked a little to the disadvantage of Tis the Law. But in the case of a lot of other horses that wouldn't even be in the starting gate in May, it's certainly been a benefit. So you have to factor in that part of it in terms of your handicapping. And I think you also have to consider that a horse who maybe wasn't at their best, but was sort of an also ran, but kind of competitive earlier in the season, that might be better now, might be able to close the gap. But the rest of the rules of handicapping, I think that most of the stuff that we apply doesn't apply anymore. Certainly the mile and a quarter is not quite as much of a question mark, especially for Tis the Law, as it would be in May. And the timing and the old adages of who can and can't win based on statistics and who's done it before are going to be different given the timing.
Yeah, I think this is a completely different race myself because of the postponement. These are much more mature horses. They physically have developed so much more over the last 4 months. And to me, this is more like handicapping the traditional Travers in late August, that sort of calendar time, than it is a first Saturday in May kind of race. So I'm sort of approaching it from that standpoint.
That's a really interesting take, and I agree with both of you all there. You know, one thing that I have to mention, Jenny, it's kind of a funny story about Derby rules. I've never been a big fan, because when I was in college, a friend of mine was heading back to the Derby, and he didn't have access to bet, and he wanted to bet Strike the Gold. And he didn't qualify on dosage. And I said, I'm not even betting this. I'm booking it. He's never going to win. And then sure enough, of course, Strike the Gold won. So I kind of learned my lesson there about Derby rules. And they quickly become forgotten, you know, like dosage is hardly ever talked about anymore. And it was all the rage for a while. And I think naturally Justify will diminish the talk of the unraced at 2 kind of rules. So, we hardly hear the word Apollo anymore. But I think, all the insights that have been presented thus far, it is a very different race. It's months later. These horses in their development are just much farther along.
One thing that I always looked at was the last 8th mile and the final mile at prep before the Derby. And that statistically is a pretty good pattern. The horses that come in under 13 seconds, the last 3/8 under 38 seconds. But again, it's so different. And I'm not even doing that this year. Ron Flatter out in Vegas is kind of carrying the banner for that. And I'm glad, but he said some of the horses went a mile and 16th in their last. Some went a mile and a quarter. So that'd be kind of interesting to see, because you'd think more of the horses would actually, quote unquote, qualify on that, would be more prepared to go the mile and a quarter. So I guess I'm hoping that whoever wins, quote unquote, qualifies, so I can keep that theory going when we're back to having a normal Derby, whenever that is. But right now, we are going to show you all a short video to show you just what all Second Stride is about.
What can I do? My racing days are done. And my record won't get me into the history books. I may not have a champion bloodline, but I still have heart. So what can I do? Maybe my strong legs will make me a great jumper. Maybe I'll prove my endurance on a new track. Maybe my regal disposition will shine in some unexpected way. Or maybe my gentle heart will be just what someone's missing. All this is possible because someone took the time to realize that it isn't what I can do, it's that I still can do.
That is a very cool video, and it's so neat how the people at Second Stride are able to, speaking of handicapping, take these horses and realize and figure out what they can excel at, give them the best chance to succeed. But again, you know what? Even though they're all volunteers, it costs money to have these horses and to retrain them and rehome them. And so we hope you all will be generous and go to kyderby2020.givesmart.com or the Second Stride Facebook page, Second Stride website, and participate in the silent auction, participate in by a post position draw. We had a question, and I lost the question. So, okay. Do you think a win in the Derby this year is going to be more of a factor for the Breeders' Cup Classic? A very good question from Molly. Anybody want to jump in?
I think there's a real possibility of that, just because you're talking about a race that's only coming 2 months in front of the Classic as opposed to 6 months. So it's more established form, more mature horses, and less time for something to go awry from the spring. So I think there is a very good chance that the Derby winner will be potentially more of a factor in this year's Classic.
I agree with that view. I think it's, the timing is such that it's more of a current form evaluation, as Jay just said.
Well, you're right. You got more form to really handicap as opposed to projecting what they might do.
Right, and with horses, 5 or 6 months is it's
a career for some of them.
Yeah.
Well, and it's pretty telling that if you look at the polls right now of the top Classic contenders, I think Tis the Law has been on that top 10. In fact, among the top 4 or 5 horses ever since we started doing the poll. So it's not necessarily indicative of what will actually happen in the race, but it sure tells you what most people were thinking even before the Derby. So whoever wins the Derby is probably going to move up the poll for sure.
Yeah, and people have been talking about if Tis the Law would go on and go Belmont, Derby, Preakness, is there an asterisk by the Triple Crown? And I say there is an asterisk, but I say it's an asterisk in a good way, because he will have done something that would have been really remarkable. And I guess it's to even think about in the same equation that maybe this horse, I know he's only won the Belmont, he's won the Travers, just really remarkable to have a horse still so good. And has been, won the Florida Derby and was good, and just to keep going really, so that leads to our second question. The one time he did get beat was Churchill Downs. It was muddy. He was on the inside. He was in maybe a little tight. Does this give hope to people that he's not invincible, that there's a way to beat him, or are we kind of grasping at straws thinking that trying to get clever as opposed to just seeing what's in front of your eyes. That, since the point system, more often than not, the best horse seems to win the Derby.
I think it's a stretch, but I do think you look at past performances. The fact is that Tiz the Law's gone other places though, and been able to run well on a variety of different racetracks. So it would kind of seem like you could forgive him the 2-year-old method, because so few horses are ever able to go undefeated. That one situation where you could argue it wasn't because of the track or anything else other than perhaps a miscue on the jock's part in that instance, or the way the race came together. But I kind of just think it was the earlier stage in Manny's relationship with Tiz the Law, and also it being on a big stage. And now they've gained so much confidence that I don't know if it's grasping at straws, but I think it would take a whole lot more than just being sloppy or being Churchill Downs for that. The bigger thing to me is the timing, just that he's been so good for so long that you wonder how many more races does he maintain that type of form, because it's so rare. Even American Pharoah wasn't able to carry it through the Travers Stakes. So that's more of a concern to me than anything, but it's not a big concern.
Yeah, I'm not so much worried about the Churchill Downs. There was another factor in that race as well. It was at night, don't forget. It was under the lights, which will not be a factor this time. But for me, the inside is potentially something to watch, because if he draws inside, because in that race and then in a couple of subsequent races in Florida this year, he was ridden as though they wanted to get him away from being inside horses and getting that kind of perfect stalking trip that he was able to get in the Belmont and the Travers. So that is one aspect of that Churchill race that for me was the biggest takeaway, was maybe he doesn't like being inside. But to one of Caton's points, he's had so much more of a foundation now by this race being postponed by 4 months as opposed to it being in May, that he might have grown out of that even if it was an issue anyway.
I think those are good points. In fact, I was going to mention the same thing that Jay was. I think the inside part is a key element here. I'll be very curious to see how he draws, because as Jay mentioned, and I believe it was the Holy Bull earlier this year, he was drawn inside, and Manny Franco pretty much kind of took him out of the inside and actually gave up some of his position to take back and get to the outside, which in general I don't like to see. I want to see a horse, if it can secure position, keep that position. Since then, if I'm not mistaken, the horse has drawn pretty comfortably outside and has been able to work out those kind of trips. I think they naturally would like to be in the middle or outside of the field when posts are drawn tomorrow. I am a bit curious, how he handles shipping. We only have a one race sample of this, essentially. He has, as Kate mentioned, won on different tracks, but for the most part, he's raced where he's trained: Gulfstream Park, Saratoga, Belmont. So when he did kind of take his show on the road after not working at a track, that was at Churchill Downs last year. So potentially that could be telling in some way, but at the same time, he may have just lost because he lost that day. That certainly happens too. I might shoot one free throw and miss it. Doesn't mean I'm going to miss every single one. It was just one.
I just realized I made Tim Byrne a CPA. He is a certified journeyman farrier, and I also realized these sponsors just keep multiplying. We also have to thank Excel Equine Lanes End and the American Farriers Association. So again, thanks to all the sponsors making this event possible. We are going to take a quick break now to hear from Kim Smith about Second Stride, to learn a little bit more about the organization. And remember, people, to go online for the silent auction and to buy a post position to raise money for this great cause.
I'm Kim Smith, founder of Second Stride. In 2005, myself and some fellow syndicate members recognized the need to start a charity that would specialize in finding safe homes for the transition of thoroughbred racehorses. So racehorses in need, racehorses that have never won a race, or racehorses like this one here, Something Awesome, would have a safe transition. Something awesome won over $1 million, but others are not quite as lucky as him. We're here to give those horses a new start and to find out what they might like to do in their second careers. We provide the time it takes to research the prospective adopters and find a great match for that horse, as well as give follow-up referrals for the adopters. Since 2005, Second Stride has found homes for over 1,000 horses, and we continue to grow every year. This year, we've had a record year. We've placed over 95 horses since January. We have 2 facilities, one here in Oldham County, which is our training facility, and another rehabilitative center in Henry County. It's right between Keeneland and Churchill. Our training facility lies about 30 minutes outside of Churchill Downs. We appreciate you tuning in for this show. All of our horses are cared for by the donations of private individuals and grants, like those that we get from the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. Everyone that has helped make this show happen has done so as volunteers, and we appreciate your time tuning in as well. Please take a moment to look at our silent auction items available at GiveSmart. You can find the link to that on our website. And we also hope you'll come out for a tour of our training facility here in Oldham County, where you can meet guys like this millionaire, something awesome. So we appreciate your time, and please check out our website, www.secondstride.org.
Oh,
Hello, I'm Kim Smith, founder of Second Stride. This is I'm Kim Smith, founder of Second Stride. In 2005, myself and some fellow syndicate members started Second Stride. Hello, I'm Kim Smith, founder of Second Stride. In 2005, myself, I'm already tired.
That's great.
yeah. And one thing I want to say about Second Stride is when you give to them, you can give with confidence because they are an accredited aftercare facility by the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, which is really one of the great initiatives that the industry actually rallied all parts of it to launch a few years ago. And Jack Wolf here in Louisville deserves a lot of credit for getting it off the ground by saying, we need to do this. And finally, as I heard the story, the Board of TOBA said, okay, you're in charge. Let's get this done. And, I've had people involved with these accredited facilities say it's easier to get your IRS tax exemption than it is to get accredited by them. They really look at the horse's vet records, everything. They are, they have the annual inspections. So we know these horses are getting great care. And also then TAA helps fund them, which is so important. But TAA can't do everything. And that's why it's so important for people like all of you out there to support this really cool cause in finding, new homes and new professions for our retired racehorses. It's a race that's never over. There's always going to be racehorses that are going to be retired and need homes, but we've made great strides. And with your generosity, we'll be able to make even more thanks to organizations like Second Stride. All right, we have our next question here. And it's, how do we evaluate the California horses after Uncle Chuck ran so poorly in the Travers? And given the small fields that they've run in this year, I think Honor AP is going to be no worse than the third choice in the race, I would say. But Jay, I'll start with you because you're a California guy.
Well, there's 2 parts to that question. So I'll start with the Uncle Chuck aspect of it. I don't think that's really a fair evaluation of the totality of the California horses. Uncle Chuck was really being pushed along. The Travers was only his 3rd start, and the wheels obviously came off that day. He was asked just to do a whole lot in a short amount of time, and it turned out he couldn't handle it. But Authentic shipped and won the Haskell earlier this year in his last prep for the Derby. But and there were even earlier races with some of the California horses going to Arkansas and winning stakes races there. So I'm not so worried about the Travers being a race that shows what the California horses can or cannot do. I think the situation, though, about the field size, Jenny, is a very significant one because Honor AP is going to run against just about more horses in the Derby than he's run in combined in all his starts up till now. The last race he was in, he had both 1,000 words. That was a 4-horse field. The Santa Anita Derby had a small field. So that's going to be a significant change from what he's experienced so far.
Interesting. It could work in his favor, though. I mean, maybe he gets a different sort of pace scenario or something like that. So I guess that's what we see. But Peyton or Byron, weigh in.
Go ahead, Kaiten. Okay, well, I'll talk to
I'm hoping that obviously that the small field size does not provide any obstacle to the California horses, because we're kind of all in with 1,000 words. But with Ferrand Giroux riding 1,000 words for Bob Baffert, but I do think he's an interesting horse in that he's kind of, and this is almost goes back to the question earlier about the development and the timing of the Derby, that the timing may work out better for him. Whereas he had a slump in the middle. But I do think that this year there's at least more parity as far as the competition is concerned. If you take out the standouts, which would be Tis the Law and Art Collector, everybody else has kind of constantly beat one another. There's been very little consistency, I think, amongst the 3-year-olds besides the top ones. So I don't know that California is any different than that. And I kind of go individual by individual, but that's always sort of been my rule. I don't subscribe to geography quite as much as I do just the individual horse and how they seem to be coming into the race. So I don't know that it's a lesser group of horses on the whole than we've had anyplace else, with the exception of the top ones.
Echoing what my colleagues have said, I do agree that the short fields it's a concern for me looking at it. One thing I've always thought about California racing is I think they have some exceptional trainers and some exceptional horses. Obviously, where they struggle is with depth. But I think you merely have to look at the results of the Kentucky Derby and you see how good they are. I mean, if we go back the last 8 years to 2012, now granted, I kind of cherry-picked the sample a little bit and not going back farther, but, you look Justify, California Horse, 2018. Nyquist and American Pharaoh did not have their last preps in California, but they were essentially California horses that hit the road. And then you add in horses like California Chrome, and I'll have another that were based in California before they went and won the Roses. So I have learned to not underestimate the Californians in the Derby, but it is a concern. I do wonder with a horse like Honor AP, who seems to me to be like a steady pace kind of horse. Even Mike Smith kind of talks about it in his workouts. He just keeps firing 12s and things like that. If he doesn't have that acceleration to hit holes in a big field, sometimes when you have the off the pace types, they need to save a little ground or hit the hole. When we think of, the great Calvin Burrell rides that he gave on Mind That Bird and Super Saver, yes, and also Street Sense, So that is a question mark for me, but I do think he is a very good horse, and I think Honor AP leads the California contingent.
Yeah, well, the other thing about the California horses, in fairness, like what appeared to be the top of the crop there also got hurt and is not here. So we'll see what maybe the deaths. But the other thing is having a conversation with Mike Smith the other day, and he was talking about, sort of comparing this horse to Giacomo minus another 0 by Giacomo's odds from what this horse will probably be 5-1. Giacomo's 50-1. But the whole thing, what I call change of venue horses. California horses that sometimes come east really appreciate the change, the longer stretch, and all this and that. And I'm thinking that Honor AP could be one of those horses. And I do think he'll be a pretty square price because of all the attention that Tis the Law and locally that Art Collector will get, and deservedly so. So let's see what we got up. Next is, this kind of ties in. Which horses do you consider the value horse, the one or two who could spring surprises at a price?
I'll start this time around just so they don't pick my long shots. But I'm going to try New York Traffic. I thought he ran a really good race to be second to Authentic. I thought, this is in the Haskell. It looked to me, if someone had told me in early stretch or even mid stretch, what is Authentic going to win the Haskell by, I would have thought he was going to win by 3. And granted, he was slowing down, but I think also to New York Traffic's credit, in finishing second, beating a nose, he was also just fighting, and I respect that about him. And the fact that he hasn't won a stakes race, so it's been a bit of a drought for him. But he has run some very good races, including in the Matt Winn when he was second to Maxfield.
Next. Are there any other value horses?
That 1,000 words is going to be a value horse, and that I am using. So, but I mean, I'm certain that I am tainted or biased by the rooting factor there. But I do think that if you like Honor AP, then you have to consider the horse that beat him the last time. And this is the rare opportunity where you're going to get a huge price on a Bob Baffert horse in the Kentucky Derby, who's coming in off a winning effort. So I think he's a legit long shot and kind of the main horse. The other horse, though, that really just has caught my eye in terms of what he's done since the Travers is Max Player. And I know he has to make up 7 lengths on Tis the Law if everybody keeps running the way they've been running. But he's looked as if he's really enjoyed getting here to Churchill Downs. He just looks like a horse who's doing very well physically, who's training well. His workout, both his works over the track, I thought were very good. And he's changed barns, but I think, you know, if anybody knows the ropes of getting a horse ready, even though he hasn't won a Derby, it would be someone like Steve Asmussen. So I think Max Player is sort of a live upset possibility.
For me, a long shot to potentially get into the gimmicks. I don't think he's a win candidate. Would be Enforceable as a horse who I was very high on earlier this year, and I thought he kind of went a little bit off form as it was getting closer to a spring Kentucky Derby. Very analogous, Caton, to what went on with 1,000 Words, but he was given some time off, and I thought he ran a decent race in the Bluegrass. He just strikes me as a kind of horse who's going to be better the older he gets, and I think he's going to fall through the cracks in terms of a price, and I could see him running on and getting into the gimmicks a little bit. So he would be a horse for me to be using in the trifecta, superfecta.
Good info here from our panelists, and now we're going to get some good info from a surprise guest. I don't know, are we supposed to have some, like, cue up some music or something, or the bugle? But we got here for you. There he is, Brian Hernandez, also known as the exercise rider of Art Collector. Although I guess you got retired today, right? Jamie Lopez came back, so you're not you got a friend there with you.
Yeah, we have Annabelle with us.
Oh, so Brian, we got some. I think our panelists have some questions for you. Let's see. I guess it might. Caton, did you want to read, or you want me to ask the question? I've got it here. You can ask it. Your question for Brian?
No, Brian, I'm curious because I would think that you would feel like perhaps the win in the Breeders' Cup Classic was sort of the big moment for you up till now. And I'm just wondering, and maybe it's a different race too, but that certainly was, as far as the amount of people watching and the purse money involved, as well as the prestige, a huge moment. I'm wondering how it's different, if it is at all, with it being the Kentucky Derby and you being on a contender.
I mean, it's different, especially this year is really different because, you know, you don't have all the people out there on the backside and everything else like that. I think it's for having one of the top contenders, it's still kind of all new, but with not having as much press and everything else back there every day and all the people coming by the horn, it's been pretty much business as usual. We're just kind of getting ready for Derby.
Is it the Derby a different factor, though?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if, like, I mean, you always win, but...
I'm sorry?
I just wondered if, because it's the Derby and because if that in and of itself puts more pressure, or it's something different, or is it like any other race?
No, you got to go into it as any other race, really. You can't really, if you put any more pressure on you than it already is, you're just gonna kind of get in the horse's way. So you just got to take it as day to day, and it's act like it's another race.
Byron, what's your question for Brian?
Well, thanks for joining us, Brian, first of all. But I was going to ask you, Brian, if you have, obviously they draw posts tomorrow, and I was curious if you would have a preference of about where you would like to be with Art Collector. Obviously, and then
Tommy
secondly,
and I
you know, in your mind, if you've played the race out in your head, what kind of trip, if you could draw it up, that you'd like to have?
Tommy and I discussed, we'd like to be somewhere in the middle if possible, but we'll know after tomorrow. And as far as trip wise, the good thing about our horse is he's tactical. He can kind of do whatever we need him to do. As long as we go out there and make sure he leaves there cleanly and like Tommy and I discussed, we need to get around that first turn in good order. If we can get to around the first turn in good order without getting bounced around a lot, we can kind of go down the backside and work a trip out from there. So we just got to go into it, and whatever we draw after tomorrow, we'll have a better idea of where our race is going to set up and what we need to do.
And I know this is something Jay has long said about Brian, but it deserves being mentioned here. Brian is such a smart rider. He is almost always he has his horse in the right position, and it always seems like no matter the right style or whatever style they have, he seems to have them in a position if they're good enough that they can win. And I think he pulled off some big upsets, saving ground, some Calvin Burrell-like rides when he was down at Gulfstream a couple years ago. I don't think they were used to that rail-hugging tactics down there.
No, that was a lot of fun to go down there, and it was nice to ride with a different group of riders, and we got lucky on a few different trips. And down there at Gulfstream, if you can save some horse and just stay on the fence, it's a pretty good, easy place to get through. So it was a lot of fun to do it.
Well, I'm delighted for you, buddy. Good luck on Derby Day.
Thank you, Byron.
Jay, question for Brian.
Yeah, Brian, I was just curious, obviously, I think if people know about your background, you're the son of a jockey and you grew up in Louisiana. I was just wondering what your earliest memory of just sort of being aware of the Kentucky Derby is, maybe the first time you might even remember watching it or having the desire to want to win the race.
Really, I always remember when I was a kid, it was the year Go for Jen won. That was the first Derby I can remember watching Chris McCann win Go for Jen.
That was 1994.
Was it 94? I think I was 7.
Well, good luck on Saturday.
Thank you, Jay.
I think we have a question from a fan. Oh, who would you rather be stalking, Authentic or King Guillermo?
We'll have to just go back and watch both their replays again just to see and decide which one we think will be faster going around the first turn. So after we do the draw, we'll see which one looks faster in their replays, and we'll go from there. And plus, it just depends on whoever breaks. That's another big thing with the Derby. It's getting away from the gate that first eighth of a mile cleanly. So it all changes from there.
Yeah, and this one thing I don't know if other readers know about or viewers know about Brian, but this one thing that always impressed me, Brian was still in high school when he first came up to Kentucky to ride on weekends. He was riding, I guess during the week you were riding at Delta or Evangeline, and then, but you had a deal, right, with your parents that you would stay in school. So during the week you were there, and then you were, coming up to Kentucky to ride, and just I've always been impressed with how you've always been pretty implacable, even when you were 18 years old, and won the Eclipse Award. And then when things got a little tough, like it often does when you lose an apprenticeship, you just stayed steady, and each year you can just see the payoff's been great. But I have a question: are you all really as calm as you all seem to be around the barn? You and Bruce and Tommy Drury.
Yeah, that's kind of how it's been. That's been one of the funnest things about this horse is just he's made our job so easy, and he's kind of put that calming effect over all of us to where anything we put in front of him, he's kind of answered the questions and jumped through the hoops, so he's made all of our jobs really easy. So that's why you're seeing how calm we can be around him, because we know we can go out there and just do what we need to do and stay out of his way. And like Bruce said, from the moment we won the Bluegrass, that we all just needed to make sure and enjoy the moment. Everyone knows how hard it is to get to the Derby, so you need to make sure and have fun with it and just have and enjoy it.
Well, perspective is a wonderful thing, and you've got it in spades. Brian, thank you so much. But right now, I'm thirsty. We got to go back to Mark, the mixologist. And I think, Mark, what do we have in line now? I think you're going to come up with a Passion Julep. Yay. Tell us about that.
What we keep hearing from everybody involved here is passion. Whether it's the people at Second Stride or whether you're an owner, or a trainer, or a jockey, this sport is just so full of passion. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about it. We're less than a week away from the Kentucky Derby in September, which is just kind of weird, but we're still in the midst of the dog days of summer. So yes, we have to make a mint julep, but why not put a tropical twist on that? So we're going to be doing our Passion Julep. I'm going to show you this fun way to kind of spice it up, but it's going to start off with kind of the regular, appearances here. So we're going to start off with our mint, but let me show you a little trick. When you put your mints into the mint julep, always pull from the bottom, these leaves first, because if you have that beautiful sprig on top, that can make a great garnish. So that's what I always try to do. Start from the bottom, even if you have to do a couple of these here. And what we want is about maybe 5 to 7 leaves. And these, again, this is what we do at the bar. We always save those because they make beautiful garnishes. Now, what we want to do is we want to muddle this, but I think sometimes people have the wrong idea of what muddling is. People kind of think like Hulk smash, like bam, bam. That's not what it is, especially when we're doing fine herbs. Because with things like mint, there are beautiful aromatic sort of oils that we want to kind of caress out of the leaves. But if you muddle it too forcefully and you actually break the leaf up, you get some bitter compounds. And that is not what we want in the drink. So what we want to do is kind of an overhand grip here. If you don't have a professional muddler like this, feel free to use a wooden spoon or anything like that you have in the kitchen. And all we're doing is a gentle sort of just breaking the cell walls. You just want to get those aromatic oils out a little bit. This is not a forceful motion. All right. Now, next, instead of just doing sugar, we're going to spice it up a little bit. We're going to kind of do something kind of tropical here. And we're going to do a passion fruit honey syrup. And just like I said in the Second Stride cocktail, I know this sounds complicated. It really isn't. If you go to your supermarket and you go to the frozen foods aisle, they've got frozen, or they should have some sort of frozen passion fruit puree. What I do is I take maybe 1 cup of that puree in a saucepan, again, with maybe like 3/4 cup of honey. Now, honey, just like the agave nectar, you need to do something to it before you put it into a cocktail because it's so thick that it'll stick to the ice. So this, we're kind of, really helping both things out. We're integrating the passion fruit into the honey and thus loosening it up. So about 1 cup of passion fruit puree, 3/4 cup of honey, low heat, stir it together until it's uniform. You get this beautiful passion fruit syrup that will actually last longer too. So you can use this for probably, I'd say 2 weeks to 3 weeks, which is great. So we're going to do 1 ounce directly into our julep cup here. Now, if you don't have a julep cup, you can definitely make this cocktail in a large rocks glass too. But one of the nice things about this cup, of course, it's going to keep it super cold, frosty from the beginning to the end. And that's absolutely what we're looking for in a julep. All right, now, of course, we got to add the fun stuff to it. So we're going to do 2.5 ounces of Maker's Mark bourbon here. Add that directly in. The beautiful thing about cocktails like juleps is that we're building it directly into the glass, so we don't have to worry about shaking it or stirring it. And again, this is a great sort of cocktail that you can pre-batch. You can do this in pitchers, and if you have friends over, I know we're social distancing, but when the time comes that we can safely do so, it'll definitely cut down on the time that you're away from the TV. If you're watching the races, of course, that's where you want to be. Maybe you place the bet. You've got all this great advice that everyone's been giving you today. You want to see if you actually win. So to that mixture, we're going to add a first scoop of crushed ice. Now, hopefully you have some sort of crushed ice function on your refrigerator. If you don't, I would recommend just putting regular ice cubes into like a dish towel and just whack it with something, maybe a rolling pin or a meat tenderizer. It'll get the job done eventually. All right, so that's the first scoop. What I like to do is actually mix this around now. You want to sort of incorporate the ingredients and start the chilling process. And you're going to see this already. We're getting that frost. That's really what we want. But that's not it. We want to add some more crushed ice. And what you really want is kind of a dome on top of this cocktail. It should look really nice and beautiful. Ice overflowing the top. Something like this. You guys can see it happening already. And now, because we've reserved these mint sprigs, so it worked out that we took the leaves from the bottom, you do the same way we muddled those mint leaves. You want to release those aromatic oils because this is a beautiful garnish that's actually going to add to the experience. Best way to do that, you could either go like that or even a light tap. That's enough to kind of bring out those oils, and it's going to add a lot when you go down for that first sip. Now, typically I don't do this with juleps, but I'm going to sprinkle some powdered sugar on top. And the reason why I'm doing that is that we have that passion fruit in this cocktail that has a little tang to it. So I don't think it's going to hurt to have a little more sugar, and it really looks beautiful. It's like snow on top. And you know, a Derby in September is a lot closer to Christmas than it would otherwise be. So add a little straw. Guys, this is our Passion Julep. Hopefully you can see it to some extent. Cheers.
I think we all need to have a mixologist like Mark.
It definitely scores me some brownie points with my wife, I got to tell you.
We have a fan question. What's our fan question? Don't we have a fan question?
So Mark,
From Elise,
these cocktails that you make, after you've made them on camera, do you enjoy them when you're finished, or you hand them off to your wife, or what?
Depends on what the cocktail is. That's an excellent question. So I'm not back to the real life bar setting yet. And I think one of the most difficult transitions for me is going to be that on these video things, I get to enjoy the cocktail afterwards. In a real bar setting, I don't think they would appreciate me taking it back. But certain cocktails, I've made Southside pretty recently. That's one of my wife's favorites. I did a dirty martini, which she loves as well. So the funny thing is that in those cases, you'll see an arm just kind of come from off screen and then remove the cocktail. But I try to hold on to some of them, though.
Very good.
The tout of the night. Well, speaking of touting, we did have a question from a viewer, Elise, who wants to know, what kind of bets and which horses would you suggest for an amateur bettor? Somebody maybe wants a lot of action, maybe not a big investment. Suggestions.
But Jenny, I'll jump in because this is one that actually has worked really well for people that were new to the Derby. But I don't know how well it'll work this year if the favorite wins. But typically, I get people to take 4 horses that they like and do an exacta box. And if you get lucky and you have a big price, which frequently happens, that either wins the race or finishes second, you'll hit it. And by picking 4 horses, you kind of increase the likelihood of that. Even if there's a favorite involved, maybe you still get a big enough price that it at least offers a little bang for your buck. So typically in the Derby, I say, and it's the only race where with 20 horses or somewhere in that vicinity, you have a shot to actually make a nice profit if you hit that exacta. So I do a $1 exacta box for the people who are not wanting to wager a lot, but still want to have some bang for their buck.
Anyone else have any? I know you're not really quite wired that way. But like Kate said, the pool is so big on the Derby, and with the the largest field that you'll bet on all year, even if it doesn't make it quite to 20 this year, you can get some good pricing. If you really like a horse in a race, you can sometimes get too clever trying to hook them up with like trifectas and things like that. Just be sure to maybe bet them straight too, because you'll get some prices on, especially with all the action that 'tis the law figures to get. And that's one thing I want to ask a panelist. Do you all really think that they're talking about maybe being odds on? I mean, 17 horses, that's a lot of money to make a horse odds on. Is 'tis the law going to be odds on, do you think?
I think he will be. I think, the other thing that's, or at least when you see some of the early pools or some of these casinos that have put up prices, he seems to be in that vicinity. Also, I kind of wonder if how the Derby betting the Derby betting could be different this year. You might have, we always see some strange things that happen in Derby betting, like patch becoming really popular and taking all the action, because people want to bet a one-eyed horse. But I'm wondering this year, without the, the massive crowd and without the, maybe some of those novice plays around and about, if with more simulcasting, more at-home wagering, if some of that will be, less impactful.
That's a good
I think
point.
that's a fair observation, Byron. But if you do want to bet a one-eyed horse, Finnick the Fierce is out there for you this year.
That's true.
That's true. He's probably the least publicized one-eyed horse that we've seen in quite a while. Which horses do you think will take a lot of money, but you're throwing out? And it's all relative when you say a lot of money.
For me, I'm really torn on Authentic because I think he's going to be about the fourth choice in the race, and I really respect his ability. I just felt that going beyond a mile and an eighth is going to be a furlong beyond his best. But I've been tempered lately just by watching him train here at Del Mar. You couldn't fault anything he's done in terms of his preparation for the race. But if he were to take more money than I think he probably should, then he might be a horse for me to try and take a shot against. But I'm less bullish on my belief that he's not going to handle a mile and a quarter now than I was a month and a half ago. I'll tell you that.
Peyton, Byron?
I wish I could give you a good.
I was going to say Authentic.
Go ahead, Kate.
No, you don't have one? Oh, everybody's got to have one.
The starting. So, Kaiten, the floor is yours. Authentic. Why?
Okay. No, I had been listening to Jay all season long, so Authentic was kind of going to be that horse, and now it sounds like he's less convinced about the mile and a quarter. So the other horse, though, that I don't know what odds he'll be, but I think there will be some support for him because he worked fast and because he's gotten a bit more attention and form is good, is King Guillermo. But I am just skeptical of him coming off the layoff that he's coming off of and being able to run back to the same performances that we saw prior to the layoff. So especially in the Kentucky Derby and the way the race would probably play out. So he would be the horse for me, probably King Guillermo.
Byron, before we get to you, I got to make a news alert. Post positions 5 and 7 are still available on the 50-50 challenge at kentuckyderby.2020.givesmart.com. And those are traditionally really good post positions in the Kentucky Derby. So y'all might, get online and support Second Stride. And also we have about 45 minutes left in the silent auction. So again, support this great charity. Okay, Byron, now support our charity of trying to make money at the races. Who would you pick?
There you go. Let's see here. Someone just looks like Grandson Social just says, what's the best post position? So that's our host here. That's a tough one to call on the Derby because so much of it is, a bit random. But it's interesting when we're talking about post positions, the new starting gate that is going to be unveiled. In fact, it's a 20-horse starting gate. Of course, we only have 18 current horses that are looking at the Derby. But in years gone by, we had a main gate of 14 and an auxiliary gate that would hold up to 6. So now we have just a continuous 20-horse gate. I had a chance to peek at it, as did Jennie, on the backstretch this week. And, it's pretty cool looking, to be honest with you. So that will be interesting. Because of this, the inside post will not be as close as it has been in years past, according to the starter, Scott Jordan. So he said the 1 would be kind of the equivalent of the 3 because of where the gate will be placed. So I think that's kind of interesting. And he also said that if fewer than 20 enter, what they do is the first, let's say there were only 19, they'd leave the first stall empty. If there was 18, they'd leave the first stall on the inside and the first on the outside empty. So it may not be as bad for the inside post horses, which in years past, it's been a long drought since Ferdinand.
Yeah. MVP could be the tractor driver trying to put the 20-horse gate into position without a lot of practice. There is going to be a race tomorrow, I understand, at a mile and a quarter.
Right,
But
race 2.
now we're at the question that everybody really wants to know. Who are your picks? Who are your, let's say, top 3? Do you want to go with a 4 to round out the superfecta? Great. Who wants to start? Jay.
Barring him getting an inside post, I would have to have is the law. But if he were to draw inside, I think he's potentially vulnerable. But I do think Honor AP is going to run a huge race. And for me, it comes down to those two. I think they're the 2 likeliest winners of the race. And I think it's a significant cutback to anybody else. And like I was saying earlier, for a long shot for the gimmicks, I'd use Enforceable.
Caitlin.
I'm picking Tis the Law. What's so ironic is it would have been the pick in May. I mean, truly.
Yeah.
And everything he did in Florida impressed me. I really didn't get down on him even with the loss as a 2-year-old last year. I really think the horse has progressed, the horse has matured. Manny has all the confidence in the world in him now, Manny Cruz, and it just seems like the stars have aligned. If by chance there's the horse you pick to win, and then there's how you bet it, right? And so I'm going to probably use Max Player along with him, and certainly to round out the trifecta, I would throw in 1,000 Words and or Art Collector in the top 4 for the superfecta.
And I am going to agree with my colleagues here. I see, I've got a Tis the Law and Art Collector 1, 2. I've been impressed with them both for the reasons that's just been mentioned about Tis the Law already. I, like Jay, have some concerns about the inside if he were to get a bad post tomorrow. But I think Art Collector has just been outstanding this year, and he has a bit of the home court edge. He had 2 nice, wins at Churchill Downs this spring. He's 4 for 4 this year. He hasn't had to ship around very much. Just a little scamper down to Ellis Park and a little ship over to Keeneland. So I think he should have a lot left in the tank. So I'll throw New York Traffic in 3rd to take a little price and not have just pure junk.
Well, there's a reason I'm the moderator and not one of the handicappers. So. But I do think that there's 3 exceptional horses. Yeah. I go back and look at some of my picks and said, it's so easy after the fact. But since the point system, the favorites have done very well where they didn't for a long time. It's because they're just the best horses and the point system is really established. But we just don't know what this delay, because you have horses that wouldn't have been in, they're in the Derby because horses got hurt and they could get in the Derby and their owners, I call the $50,000 saddle town. But I do think that there's, again, the thing about Tis the Law, how long can you stay good? Honor AP, I have a lot of regard for Mike Smith and his comments, and just watching Art Collector. I mean, he just really, really looks like a good horse, and maybe just because it'd be so cool. But speaking of Art Collector, there's a halter that's being auctioned in the silent auction. Get it now, because what's the value going to be possibly Sunday for that if the horse wins the Kentucky Derby? So, let's raise some money for Second Stride and get on the silent auction on the Second Stride website. And also, I think there's still some visit Kentucky Derby 2020.givesmart.com. And you can still have buy the 50-50 post position purchase. So now we've got a Kirsten story here, our last segment.
In April of this year, 2 years ago, I was on the track with him. We were at Canterbury Park in Minnesota. He was bought as a yearling by my boyfriend, which is who I galloped for that summer. We spent all summer together. He was then claimed in spring Reposado over the winter as a 3-year-old. He returned to Kentucky in April, and that happened before I was born in Second Stride at Mosherwood Farm. we've learned a lot. We've both been transitioning off the track. I've been able to learn to jump, and he's been amazing in doing that. He has a lot of talent. So it gives me a lot of confidence for something that I've never done before. He's opened up a lot of doors for me, and now we're on our way to a farm of our very own in Ohio, which is where I'm from.
The exercise rider for years later. Those are the kinds of stories you have at Second Stride. And that's why it's so important to raise money for these, like so many entities. Second Stride, they usually do an in-person big fundraiser. Couldn't do it this year because of COVID. But the world's still going on even without COVID, and there's still these needs. And one is for horses and finding good homes for them and retraining them. And that's the good work that Second Stride does. So it's so important to look. I mean, look at these beautiful horses and jumping, and just some of them might just be lawn ornaments, but they're going to have a good, safe home. These horses are so good to us. They take care of us when they're racing. We need to take care of them when they're through racing. Look how that horse is jumping over a barn. Wow, that's impressive.
A big horse.
Yeah, really. I want to bet him. So, anyways, just want to thank everybody for, participating and tuning in. And please participate in the silent auction at KentuckyDerby2020.givesmart.com. And there's the 50-50 post position purchase. And, look at that art collector halter. That could really be worth something come Sunday. I know a lot of us locals. This is an amazing stat, but there's never been a homegrown Louisvillian trainer win the Kentucky Derby, which is pretty amazing. You've had like Lynn Whiting that moved as an adult to Louisville, but you've got potentially 3 in this Derby with Tommy Drury, with Dale Romans, and then with Greg Foley, who says if they win, he doesn't care if there's no fans. He's having the biggest party ever in Oldham County, and we're all invited. But I want Mark, the mixologist, to be there, and some number 1 tequila in Maker's Mark. How about that? So, want to thank all of the wonderful sponsors that support this program, not just tonight but year round, and all of you, and wishing everybody happy handicapping and a good, safe, and healthy Kentucky Derby.
You're here.
Thank you for having us.
Happy Derby.
Happy Derby. And Jennie, thank you to you, because I know you have supported Second Stride with these various events that we've had pre-Derby. And I know this has been a little bit different than we planned, but you've always put a lot of work into them and have really, we've been fortunate enough to get to join together on some of the others. And so hopefully a year from now, we'll be doing it in May and doing it in person. So
yes, and I'm sure Doc Diamond will probably be calling us all tomorrow and lining us up for next year. But we do want to thank Sky High for being the sponsor of this handicapping panel, and hope our great panelists gave y'all some good insight.